It's Thursday, January 9th, 2025. It's a disaster decades in the making in California. Why one story out of the sports media world is making me weirdly optimistic, and Joe Rogan hears the gospel, along with his 14 million listeners. Next on the AM Update.
Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
And you could revert water up into the hills where you have all the dead forests, where the forests are so brittle, because no place is like California.
And I don't know why that's controversial.
We've not been told the truth for fear it might stoke racist division.
It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
6 wildfires are burning in Los Angeles County, including the Pacific Palisades and Silmer neighborhoods of Los Angeles, and another near the city of Pasadena. The Palisades Fire, the Eaton Fire, the Hearst Fire, the Olivos Fire, the Lydia Fire, and the Woodley Fire are all raging as of Wednesday night. The fires are 0% contained. More than 100,000 residents are under evacuation orders as the LA area wildfires threaten at least 28,000 structures. The Pacific Palisades Fire is now the most destructive singular fire in Los Angeles city history, with an estimated 1,000 structures destroyed. LA Mayor Karen Bass returned home from Ghana yesterday. Why she was in Ghana, only Allah knows. It was revealed that she cut funding to the fire department in Los Angeles by $17.6 million just months before the blazes. The LA Fire Department also in recent years passed a racial equity plan to end quote-unquote systemic, institutional, and structural racism in Los Angeles. Part of this plan is a chart to map out the race of every employee to make sure they're racially diverse enough. Of course, Karen Bass, as I said, she's the mayor of Los Angeles. Here she is in an airport caught by Sky News. Sky News is a UK TV station. Here they are catching her at an airport en route from Ghana to Los Angeles. Listen to this.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster?
That is someone who has never, ever, ever in her adult life had to be challenged on a level such as that, as she just stands there on the jet bridge being asked some really relevant questions, just completely ignoring every single one of them. Yesterday, LA County Sheriff Robert Luna says they're already dealing with looters.
I want to make sure people know deputies are working to assist residents who are evacuating and continuing to make evacuation notices as we're speaking. They are securing areas that are evacuated. And it's always sad when I have to say this, but part of our responsibility is to make sure that no one loots or steals from our residents, our community members who are already being impacted. And I'm sad to report we've made 2 arrests this morning for looting already. So if you are thinking about coming into any of these areas to steal from our residents, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to be caught, you're going to be arrested, and you're going to be prosecuted.
Again, just adding insult to the injury of the thousands upon thousands impacted by the various fires in Los Angeles County. Here's Joe Biden in Los Angeles just yesterday, actually in Santa Monica to be precise, making it all about him, narcissist to the last.
The good news is I'm a great-grandfather.
So yes, that is Joe Biden in California as tens of thousands of people are displaced, really 100,000 people displaced, and hundreds of thousands more structures in harm's way as none of these fires as of Wednesday evening were contained. Talking about, congratulations, Mr. President, you're a great-grandfather. That's not really important right now. Donald Trump on Truth Social yesterday placed the blame squarely at Governor Gavin Newsom for his policies related to forest management. He said in a post on Truth Social, quote, Governor Gavin Newsom refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and the snow melt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work. but didn't care about the people of California. That is true, by the way. Here is Donald Trump just 4 months ago warning California about this very exact danger and some specific steps they could take to mitigate wildfire danger.
And you have so much water, and all those fields that are right now barren, the farmers would have all the water they needed. And you could revert water up into the hills where you have all the dead forests, where the forests are so brittle. Because no place is like California. I go to Austria. The head of Austria tells me, we have trees that are much more flammable than what you have in California. We never have forest fires because they maintain their forests. And you have all that water that could be used as water, what they call water flow, where where the land would be damp. And you'd stop many of these horrible fires that are costing billions and billions of dollars by the federal government, etc.
That's not the only time Donald Trump has talked about forest fires in California. He's also submitted the idea of making sure you're actually, literally raking the forests around California, making sure all those pine cones and really flammable materials on forest floors are not fuel for future fires. So he does have a right to be critical of the governor of California. It's Donald Trump just 4 months ago warning about the danger of what we're seeing play out right now in California. Again, keep those involved and in the path of this wildfire in your prayers. Moving on to the political world, John Fetterman, the Democrat Pennsylvania senator, caught some eyes this week with these words on Fox News about Donald Trump's appointee.
Tulsi Gabbard, one of the nominees that you could vote for?
Well, I met with her. In fact, I think I've met with virtually all of them. And the ones that I haven't, they're on my schedule, RFK and Governor Noem. So I'm happy to meet with all of them. And that's also part of this. I don't know why that was controversial. I mean, I got a lot of blowback just, even to meet with them. And to me, I see that as just doing my job. And I'm going to have a conversation with anyone that would like to have a conversation with me. And if someone believed everything that's been written or said about me was true, I mean, you can't possibly know me, or I think I could know her either, just based on someone read. But I want to sit down and have a conversation, and I'm really glad that I've done that. And some of these nominees I'm going to vote for already. In fact, whether it's our colleague Rubio, our Representative Stefanik, or even Sean Duffy, I expect to vote for him as well too, and Brooke Rollins for agriculture. So there's a lot of them I can say right now here on Fox. I'm going to vote for them. But there's others, but that we're going to go through the process. But I'm open to hear from everyone. And I don't know why that's controversial.
Because your party is a freaking cult, Senator Fetterman. Now, I appreciate this. This is kind of where he and Bill Maher are kind of in the same category, except it's a little bit different because John Fetterman has some actual power, where it sounds like on some of these Trump appointments, he's actually going to make the Senate Republican caucus's job a little bit easier in terms of actually supporting some of these nominees. So, I'm glad for that. But again, I don't trust any Democrat as far as I can throw them. The difference between, I think, John Fetterman and Bill Maher, like I said, John Fetterman actually has some power to actually do things. Bill Maher is just a court jester. Yes, he'll complain about the Democrat Party till he's blue in the face, but then he turns around and votes for people like Kamala Harris. He's just a hypocrite. He's no more, no less than entertainment. John Fetterman, you know what? I'm not going to knock the dude if he's going to help Donald Trump's appointments get through, but I'm not going to rely on him and count him as a patriot just yet. Some just wicked evil news out of Great Britain. A really gross story from the sports media world. And Joe Rogan hears the gospel. All of that coming up next.
To the right, 111. The nose to the left, 364.
That is British Parliament yesterday rejecting a measure that would have started an inquiry into grooming gangs, which have plagued that country. We're learning now for decades. The measure was defeated in Parliament, 364 to 111. Again, this all stems from a Pakistani group of, let's just call them what they are, rapists from a couple of decades ago in Rotherham, United Kingdom, who raped and maimed and abused 1,400 young British girls, none of whom, to my knowledge, were Muslim. They were targeted because they were not Muslim. That's just wicked. One of the leaders of Great Britain's or United Kingdom's newest parties, the Reform Party, that would be Nigel Farage, said on GB News yesterday, regardless of the outcome of that vote, he's going to fund an inquiry regardless.
There was one, but it was a whitewash, frankly, because it only looked at what had happened in 6 towns and cities as opposed to the 50 that we know about now. And grooming was just but a part of it. What we need here is an inquiry that is not a shotgun that deals with all of the problems that young people can face, and that can be through the church or elsewhere. We know about these things. We need a rifle that deals with what I believe was outright racist behaviour against young white girls, who some, mercifully few, but some in the Pakistani community simply thought were trash. I have said that if the government don't give us a full review, that I will raise the money and put the money towards an independent inquiry, and I mean it. It was also very interesting that the Times leader today said, look, there has to be, the public demands that we get the full truth, because it feels like through the police, through social services, through political parties, we've not been told the truth for fear it might stoke racist division, the irony being that the crimes themselves were very racist in intent.
That is Nigel Farage, one of the leaders of the UK's Reform Party, promising an inquiry into every single one of these now 50 cities where this alleged and sometimes proven grooming and raping of young British women has been brought to light now. Just an absolutely incredibly wicked blight, one of many, on the cradle of United States civilization. That would be Britain and the United Kingdom. I just pray that justice would be served one way or another there. It needs to be served. There's a lot of smoke with this fire and a lot of victims in the path of multiculturalism, specifically in this story. There's a pretty gross story out of the sports media world. You may have seen this floating around over the past week or so. A lawsuit has been launched against Fox Sports. A former hairdresser there alleges that she was made the recipient of unwanted advances and that she actually knew of many different instances of sexual impropriety in and around Fox Sports 1, etc. One of the names involved is Skip Bayless, who says this hairdresser says Skip Bayless offered the plaintiff, her, $1.5 million to have sex with him. This hairdresser also alleges that Joy Taylor, one of the personalities on Fox Sports, and Emmanuel Acho, along with another executive at Fox Sports, were basically being passed around between each other in order to get to the top. Joy Taylor was just kind of sleeping around to get to the top of Fox News. Now, of course, the irony here is that Emmanuel Acho fashions himself as some sort of believer, but he's the first to virtue signal anytime when he can get his woke on. And Joy Taylor is... A lot of people have wondered why she even has a show at that level. Well, I guess we maybe know the answer now, allegedly. But here's why that's a really gross story. I mean, here's the grossest part of all. The plaintiff in this suit against Fox News, this former hairdresser, claims that Joy Taylor told her, after this hairdresser warned her to stop sleeping around to get to the top, Joy Taylor told her, allegedly, that she's not worried, she's more powerful than anybody in that room, anybody in that business, anybody at that network, because if she gets called out for this, she can just accuse whoever calls her out of sexual assault. That's just disgusting. That's the grossest part of this story. Here's why I'm weirdly optimistic, though. I've let this percolate. I was going to talk about this on Monday, going to talk about it on Tuesday. I was certainly going to talk about it yesterday, but I just let it percolate again. All of the conversation I've seen about this story is actually about what I just said. The grossness of what Joy Taylor is alleged to have said and was willing to pull. Lying about sexual assault to cover up the fact, alleged, that she slept her way to the top at FS1 and Fox Sports. That's what the conversation has been. Not about Skip Bayless, the defender of the patriarchy, trying to pay $1.5 million to some hairdresser to have sex with him. No, that would seem what the woke take would be, but that's not what I'm seeing bandied about basically anywhere. It's the grossness about Joy Taylor. So anyway, just a side thought. very much a side thought here, but a really gross story out of the sports media world that has me weirdly optimistic that the conversation isn't where it usually goes, which is the wicked white man trying to preserve the patriarchy and trying to coerce sex out of an underling. That's not really been the focus of this story, and that has me weirdly optimistic. I'd never heard of this individual until about last week. His name is Wesley Huff. He's a historian and Christian apologist. I believe he's a Canadian. He's also, as I understand, a bodybuilder. He appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast this week to talk about all manners of faith. Theology. How do we know what we say as Christians is true? And he did this on Joe Rogan's show. The Joe Rogan Experience, the largest podcast in the world. Estimated around 14, if not more, million listeners per episode. This might be the largest presentation of Orthodox, small o, Orthodox Christianity that the world has ever seen, maybe even rivaling Billy Graham himself. This is Wesley Huff on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Changes the course of human history. This thing changes the direction, the ideology that these people subscribe to, and the moral and ethical structure that they live their life by. It changes untold billions of human beings from that point on.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
That in itself, even if this is just a revelation without a divine interaction, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that it was created at all. Like the whole idea that Christianity, when you're saying that the book of, was it the book of Isaiah?
Yeah.
That the same book is exactly the same as, like, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
If you just imagine the sheer number of illiterate people, the sheer number of days that have to go by where people are telling the story exactly the same, and that it's entrusted in the hands of these very few people that are so dedicated to it that they get the exact words right 1,000 years later, pretty bananas.
Well, I mean, that is kind of the crazy thing about Christianity, where you have this Jewish itinerant guy who's walking around first century Roman occupied Judea. He's making some pretty audacious claims to be God himself, and then he predicts his own death and resurrection. And then his disciples they think it's over. Like, they're like, he's dead, we're done.
Yeah.
And then they go from 11, scared men, because Judas commit suicide, scared men in an upper room, to completely overhauling the Roman world in only a couple hundred years, because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like, there's something different that goes on there, that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
So what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Well, I think, so as a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024, trying to figure this out. Literally the end.
Yeah.
Last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We, as in you and I, right? Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on. For. And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well,
How many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15.
Man, yeah, again, never heard of that guy before 2 weeks ago. There are other parts of this interview where Wesley Huff talks about, hey, is Jesus Christ just, an archetype for morality? And Huff absolutely destroys that notion, right to Joe Rogan. Even says that people who believe that Jesus is just an archetype for morality are missing the fact, or are trying to trick themselves, deceive themselves into the notion that they can save themselves. That's a pretty good presentation of the gospel for somebody who is a true seeker, not one of the seekers at the seeker-sensitive church. And this is a guy, Joe Rogan. You heard him in his admiration there. It was admiration for the prophecies of Jesus Christ from the Old Testament, from the book of Isaiah. And the fact that whatever you think of Jesus, this thing popped in the first century and has been growing ever since. He expresses admiration for that, whereas 15 or 20 years ago, he was a mocker of that. Pray for Joe Rogan, and pray for everybody who heard that presentation on Joe Rogan's podcast this week. That is incredible stuff. And finally, a quick air analysis. This week, we're going to go talk about our poll of the week. I asked you, Matthew Leibelsberger, the alleged Las Vegas bomber. I gave you 4 options, well, 3 and then unlimited options after that, about what you think actually happened there in Las Vegas. I asked you, do you think he had a psychiatric break? Do you think he was abducted by some domestic organization? Abducted by some foreign organization or other? And I asked you to explain in the comments. And I was actually pretty surprised at one of these results. Let's go to the other first, though. Let's see. Well, we'll start with this. Sam W. says, alive and hiding, trying to expose the government. YONJ says MK Ultra. Thunder Goat said killed in action in Ukraine, casualty laundered into some other useful misdirection. That's interesting. William Lambert also says MK Ultra candidate. Melissa B with this, the rise of use in marijuana and other psychedelics, as well as the astronomically high use of prescription psychoactive medications. I could easily see a psychiatric break being the logical cause here. So that's kind of putting more meat on the bones of the first option I gave you. Sarah Hannah says who? Caitlyn Jenner's prostate says Patsy. Ryan the Christofascist says MK Ultra again. Let's see. Jolly Warrior says faked his own death. Danik Bain says faked his own death. Dan KW says who? There are a few people here who have no idea what we're talking about. Lyle says he's in some sort of witness protection type program. Ward Isom says he's still alive. So here are the results. This is what I voted for. I voted for psychiatric break. Again, I'm making Occam's razor great again this year. And for now, I'm not going to hold any razor with a clenched fist. I'm just going to get a cut up hand. So again, I have that in an open hand, but I voted for psychiatric break one way or another. The second leading result is abducted by some domestic organization. That surprised me. That was at 38%. Other, explained below. I read some of those answers. 19%. And abducted by a foreign agent or foreign force. That's the lowest vote getter at just 3%. That really surprised me. I thought domestic abduction and foreign abduction would be a lot closer together. Well, thank you for participating in this week's poll of the week. We'll have another one next Tuesday. For now, though, I just want to remind you, tomorrow is another edition of, or the first edition for 2025 of Ask or Tell Me Anything. Ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Make your submissions. Look for the pinned post on my X profile at Real AM Update. Hope you have a great Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.